Hello. Welcome to another episode, Economics with Dr. Sarath Rajapathirana. Dr. Rajapathirana, welcome to our program.
Glad to be back. Thank you.
We discussed about multiple topics including productivity and so many themes related to economics. And today we are going to discuss about poverty. Can you first explain what is meant by poverty and why it is important? I mean, no one really wants to be at poverty, but as economists, why we have to keep an eye on poverty?
Yeah, we discussed this in an earlier session about poverty is an inability to look after one's children, get their clothing and things and food and all. So the main character of poverty is that their demands, what they want, cannot be fulfilled. That is a classic case of poverty.
So, Dr. Rajapathirana, now I think on our previous episodes, some people have commented asking about more statistics on poverty.
Yeah.
Can you provide some numbers on like where is Sri Lanka at the moment? There were multiple numbers that has been discussed that at one point there was like 30%, 24%.
Yeah.
Where are we now actually?
Actually, I am not sure without, but I have one correction here too. This is not the media to give out numbers in a discussion. I mean, there are enough numbers that we can get on poverty incidents, and I think they are important. I am not going to completely condemnitize it, but we use it appropriately when the occasion arises, and not a host of numbers, but what may be crucial numbers. So I am for it, yeah.
So, Dr. Rajapathirana, now when it comes to poverty, like measuring the poverty, there are multiple indicators, and often people bring out this term called purchasing power parity.
Right.
What is it about before we move on to the policies? What is it about and how people should simply understand this?
Yeah. Purchasing power parity is that if you have two countries that are trading with each other, then you have to have the similar background. So in other words, if we are dealing with the United States, Sri Lanka, United States, we can ask the question, how much is a dollar of $1,000, what can it buy in the United States and what can the same dollar buy in Sri Lanka? So that way you eliminate a lot of things like exchange rates and all that, and so it becomes a better statistics to talk about purchasing power parity. For example, when people report on income distribution or in describing the purchase of something, the value of something, you do it in purchase parity terms because then you want to see what is the amount of money that pound commands in Sri Lanka, what is the amount of money that what you can buy in the United States.
So basically you're making things comparable.
Comparable, exactly right.
From US to Sri Lanka to any country, so you can compare apples with apples.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So Dr. Rajapathirana, I think at the very first episode also we discussed about why Sri Lanka is poor and what can we do about it.
Yeah.
Today under poverty, what else do you have to discuss additionally to what we discussed from our last episode?
Yeah, I think there are 2 or 3 things. First of all, I'll begin by saying Sri Lanka has a very good reputation, had in the 60s and 70s. A lot of countries looked up to us to see how come we were not very poor, number one. And number two is that our income distribution was also more fair than most developing countries. We were a leader in developing among developing countries in these 2 aspects. But we lost it in the 70s and 80s. And as a result, we lost our status. People don't cite us as the most ideal country that is dealing with poverty or that has very good income distribution. That is because 1980s and 70s, there was, particularly in the 70s, there was a lot of money printing, that is borrowing from the central bank to close deficits in the budget. Yeah. So that is what we are. We have to really now look at ways of how to get back to where we were and to earn the reputation is good for our people. The less poor people we have, the better. That is a very good mark. And it is, say, for example, there's a number that I am now quoting, the poverty incidence as a percentage of the people was 24.8. 24.8% were declared poor
after the crisis.
In 2024.
Right. So that's interesting. So Dr. Rajapathirana, you meant that we had a better poverty, like the income distribution, income distribution before 1970s, and we had a very good reputation. And then, of course, in 1970s there was sort of a closed economic approach that we completely cut down the ties with the world, and we want to manufacture everything under Sri Lanka. So how these two get connected for someone who do not understand economics? Because poverty is where people below a certain level of income, where they cannot, as you correctly explained, access for healthcare, food, so many things. But through an approach that you try to build everything in your country, how does it going to impact poverty? Because someone can think, okay, if you're producing everything in your country, you cannot have poverty because you're producing. So how can those two decisions connected with poverty?
Actually, they are not unconnected or disconnected, because actually to get out of poverty you must grow. We talked about that also.
Yeah.
So still there can be some pockets of poverty, simply because they do not have the ability to deal with certain problems that they see, like rain coming at a different time as it's happening now. And so we have to find ways of dealing with poverty, first by getting the economy going from the low rate of increase to a higher rate of increase. Second thing is our macroeconomics will be very good for a very important reason. The worst case of poverty arises from inflation.
Okay.
Because inflation is considered or described as the unkindest tax you can have on people.
Okay.
So a man who earns 100,000 rupees a month and the person who earning 100 rupees a month are going to buy at the same price.
Dr. Rajapathirana, now you mentioned about this inflation issue even you said after we had a good track record on income distribution, then because of inflation, that's the worst type of tax. That's where we basically, a lot of people fell below the poverty line.
Yeah.
Now, and also you brought the example how the inflation, how the inflation took off, because when you print money by the central bank to breach the budget deficit, that is where this problem comes in. But now, as far as we know, that window is closed now. That now with the new Central Bank Act, you cannot budget finance through the central bank. So then, are we safe? Are we okay? Do you think that the poverty numbers will become better? It will go in the positive direction rather than the negative direction.
Not totally, actually, because you can do other things to the economy in order to, you can deal with macroeconomic problem by reducing inflation is only 0.8%. I'm not saying that it's very good to be 0.8. I think our inflation rate should be compared with our trading partners. So if you go there, that is enough. You don't have to go to 0.8. Once you do it, that's okay, but you don't have to really target that such a low rate. So, and the other incentive reforms you make, for example, making it very easy, as you said, about opening your economy to the rest of the world, exporting as much as you can, importing also as much as you can at the right prices. If you go to the world market, you can get the right price. And those two things will help us to get out of poverty. Then, of course, we have to modernize our agriculture, for example. We have to not have any barriers to exports and imports, and can do those things to move to a higher level of achievement, that is reducing poverty, in other words.
Yeah. So now, Dr. Rajapathirana, since you spoke about, since you are speaking about poverty and also you mentioned agriculture and the modernization, now it was said that most people who are employed in the agricultural sector are the ones who are actually below the poverty line. From some of the numbers, even
Yeah.
to our economy, about 27% of our population is engaged in, according to the 27% of our labor force is in agriculture, but their contribution is about 8% to the
That is
GDP.
very true. That's standard problem.
Yes.
We have
So
seen in Sri Lanka.
so how come, like, do you think the farmers trapped in poverty because of poor modernization in agriculture, and what can we do about it, since we are discussing about poverty today?
Yeah, one reason is that that you find most of our youth, for example, don't want to remain in the village.
Yeah.
They want to come to the city.
Yeah.
So therefore, the village, the effort that is needed in order to increase, say, the return to investment in agriculture can be raised by modernizing. That is, using fertilizer properly, making water available in a reasonably good way, and those things can be done. And getting ideas of from other countries, like replanting, for example. The Japanese replant all of that thing. And a very successful country like Indonesia also.
Replanted.
Yeah.
Now in Sri Lanka, on tea, on coconut, or in rubber, I don't think we have done proper replanting for decades, I would say.
Yeah, for decades we haven't done. Yeah, that is true. So, but also because our agriculture is not modernized enough. It's not modernized.
And that replanting is also part of the modernization program, because you get better seeds, you get better plants,
That's
the
right.
productive ones.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Dr. Rajapathirana, you mentioned about two things. So, you brought out some numbers, how the 24% came in. What else people should know about poverty? You brought that valid point of how we had a better track record
in the
before
past.
1970s in the past, and how we basically, with money printing and inflation becoming the worst form of taxes, how we basically lost that edge, and the need for agricultural productivity or like agricultural modernization, so then we can take more people out of poverty. Anything else that we need to know about poverty and how we should approach eradicating poverty?
Yeah, actually, so I think I would go starting with agriculture. Why agriculture doesn't produce enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's also a conversation, do we really need to get to agriculture, because if it's so unproductive and there's land issues, lands are fragmented, but still I have seen a lot of politicians keep emphasizing on the need for agriculture. Is it because of the food security issues, or on what basis?
Actually, this is a very important point you are making. Some people have argued that we are not suited to do agriculture, period. Actually, certain parts of the country that where you can control water better is better. So that is not the places where we are doing agriculture very well. But we have a very good system in the past of aligning water, ability to get water to certain parts of the country. And there are also some lapses in it, but also a human capital part of it. A lot of youth don't want to go to be in the father's field. It's also, the return is very low, comparatively low, and they will look for some other way of earning their income.
Yeah.
But some also, we have rules that also kept the people in doing only one type of agriculture.
Yeah.
For example, I don't know the situation today, but for example, you couldn't change from paddy to something else without asking the government agent, who does not know any damn thing about procedure. Correct. About the thing. So
it is like when you for your lunch, whether you to have carrots or beans, that you have to get permission.
From someone else. Yeah, that is ridiculous. Yeah, and remember that farmers have been farming for thousands of years, so they are not dumb people. They are very smart. They can do those things, but we must make it available. We can't suddenly stop and say, hey, you can't import this type of fertilizer. You can't do arbitrary things. People must be We told what we are going to do and some alternatives prepared also.
Thanks, Dr. Rajapathirana, for making that clarification. Anything else that we need to know about poverty and your approach towards poverty and discussing on this topic?
Yeah, so we will see the 2 points here.
Okay.
Is that in order to get rid of poverty, our macroeconomics must be good also.
Macroeconomics must be good.
Everything is so connected. So that's why avoiding inflation is a very anti-poverty measure indirectly,
Correct.
but a very powerful measure, one. And the second thing is that we have this other incentive reforms.
What do you mean by other incentive reforms?
Remove all the barriers.
Right.
Barriers to movement of, for example, movement of rice from one part of the country to another. In 1970s, the type of program
Restrictions were there.
they didn't allow people to move rice from one side to the other, and so actually deficit countries continue to have the deficit, surplus countries have to go separately, and in between people have no access to food. So we are not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So
anything else, Dr. Rajapathirana, on poverty that you made about the point on inflation and the track record that we had and removing the barriers to get people out of poverty.
Yeah.
And also you touched upon like the labor productivity issue and the contribution by the labor force to the national economy and what we need to do, and also the challenges like the changing the crop zone and so forth. Anything else that we as economists or as citizens we should know about?
Yeah, actually so there are other things also that you could do. When I say modernization, what are the type of machinery that you have to for running your paddy and things. It should not be really restricted to paddy. That's the trouble. Actually, it may be horrific to say that we can import rice. Although now people are very happy that we are self-sufficient. But if you look at I give you a good example, Mahavali. Mahavali time, people have moved to Mahavali. It's a very important project for electricity. But you could buy from Burma a price for 1/6 the price that that was in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, because Burma had this good comparative advantage to produce rice, enough land, fertile land, and all those things were there.
Right.
So we also can look back at our past and see how is that we were able to produce other crops. Same land could be used for other crops. And there are enough expertise in this country to do it.
Dr. Rajapathirana, I have heard now, since we are discussing about poverty today, I have heard this saying that for poverty, you cannot really identify reasons, but there are reasons for creating wealth. So when you say approach, when we as economists making policies to eradicate poverty, I mean, do we have to think about how to create wealth among those sectors that who are under the poverty line, or whether there has to be a redistribution method that you try to uplift them through the redistribution of resources? How should the economists basically look at this issue?
Yeah, actually redistribution should come automatically. If you remove the barrier, farmers know what they want to, because land is competing for the same thing. And so instead of trying to do paddy, there could be other crops that give you more return. But again, you have to ask the commissioner whether you can do it or not.
And stay in a line
for a few
days.
So those things are there. I think farmers are clever enough. They have been at it for thousands of years. But there are little things that we can get, ordering the proper fertilizer, what people need, ability to get water properly. I think I talked about Ethiopia, for example. They didn't have good water system. That's why they had famines and things also. So we had systems like that, good systems. We can refurbish them and modernize it so the water is available at a particular time. And
we can improve the productivity and the efficiency.
Yeah.
Dr. Rajapathirana, now I want to highlight again, like as economists, do we have to think about poverty or on the wealth creation? And you brought a very important point that if you are removing the barriers, the redistribution will take itself automatically.
Automatically, yeah. Actually, yeah.
So as an aspirant, I mean, as a young economist who are watching our program,
Yeah.
is there an advice from you that how to approach the problem after working with multiple countries?
Yeah.
How should you basically look at it? Because the challenge would be when you think about wealth, people might think, okay, you are completely leaving out the most vulnerable people in society.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you are too obsessed with poverty, you are basically you're not allowing the country to grow. So then the spillover effect may not take place.
Yeah.
How do you strike a balance, or is there a way of looking at it? Better
My
way?
feeling is that first point, since farmers have been farming for thousands of years, there's nothing new we can teach them.
Right.
But on the other hand, we have to modernize our agriculture by looking at crops, particular varieties. Sri Lanka had done great on that with varieties. We produced great varieties in the 1960s, 70s, great varieties. And so go back to that type of culture to do that. And but certain, as I said, the human capital movement also cannot be stopped. You know, this is a free country. We can't tell people you
not
can't.
to.
Yeah, not to go from A to B,
Yeah.
which is there. Some countries still have it. Some countries need a visa to go from point A to point B. Actually, we don't need that. We didn't have it. We had it for a very short time, I remember.
Oh, is it?
Oh yeah, you couldn't carry and rice from one place to another. So the people who are having a deficit could not get the money. People who had a surplus couldn't sell their stuff. So it's really double whammy.
Right. Anything else, Dr. Rajapathirana, we should know about poverty and our approach for poverty? You brought very interesting points, like about the redistribution, how it can be
Yeah,
done
poverty,
automatically.
I like to think of poverty as an outcome of a particular set of issues.
Right.
Poverty, yeah. So when you get out of poverty, you reverse those things.
Right.
For example, making water available at the right time, getting the right fertilizer and not say crazy things like you can do it with this, you don't have to go. There is a lot of knowledge here in this country who know agriculture very well. You know, people who can contribute it to development agriculture in other countries also.
Got it.
And so that's the program. I mean, basically, the macroeconomics must be right.
Macroeconomics has to be right.
Yeah.
Agriculture has to be modernized if we
Yeah.
are going to
Yeah.
basically come out from poverty.
Yeah.
And at the same time, inflation is the worst,
Yeah, unkindest tax.
unkindest tax. Then
Yeah.
you are finding it very difficult to come out from poverty.
Yeah.
So those are the main messages that you need to keep in mind.
There's something on inflation. Since all prices do not rise and fall equally, then some goods and services are more elastic, and so it distorts the way how goods and services are distributed in the system.
Right.
So that's another issue. And also institutions.
That's very important.
Yeah, they are important.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajapathirana, for joining us.
Yeah.
Anything else that did we miss out?
For now, that's what I can give.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. We are having another episode in the coming week, again discussing about economic issues with Dr. Sarath Rajapathirana. Stay tuned. We are going to discuss about different countries, different economists who basically brought different ways of looking at these economic issues. So stay tuned. We are going to continue these episodes in different seasons by exploring more into some countries and also some intellectuals who work really hard on this subject. So thank you very much again, Dr. Rajapathirana, and we will see you with another episode next week.